How does Adobe Analytics tools compare with Google's tools? What is Google Analytics 360? And what analytics data drives UX design? All that and more in our special pre-Adobe Summit edition of This Week in Organic, episode number 40.
This Week's in Organic. Live from London on thisweekinorganic.com.
Broadcasting live at authoritas.com/TWiO, you're watching This Week in Organic, the weekly show that debates the ramifications of the latest SEO and content marketing news. Sign up to watch the next show live at thisweekinorganic.com. Hello and welcome, I'm David Bain, and each week I'll be joined by some knowledgeable, opinionated folks to discuss the latest happenings and anything that impacts organic traffic. And as for you in the live audience, get involved. Click on the tweet or the post buttons in your top left-hand side to share the show with your own followers and tell us what you think of what's being discussed in the comments section, and perhaps even click the call-in button and we'll have you have a conversation. But let's find out more about today's guests, where they're from, and what's caught their attention this week. So maybe starting off with Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Cavanaugh. I am the Director of Analytics at Fuel Travel Marketing. We are a full-service digital agency that focuses in the hospitality area. We're located in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It's a beautiful day here. Hope it's beautiful everywhere else. I work with both Adobe Analytics and Google Analytics clients, and I'm just excited to be here today.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. So thanks for joining us, Melissa. Also joining us today is Akshay.
Hi, I'm a UX designer at Vendesta. That's a company in Saskatoon, and we make softwares for ad agencies and stuff, and for basically sales tools and those kind of applications. Yeah, marketing automation, sales automation.
Great, okay. And you're a UX focused guy, aren't you, actually?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm pronouncing your name correctly, aren't I?
Yeah, you're saying it correct. You can call me You can call me Shay. Yeah.
Shay. Whatever you prefer. Okay. Okay, we'll go with that then. Okay, so that's wonderful. So yeah, thank you both for joining us. So we've got loads of nice topics to talk about. Topic number one is, I think it's safe to say that the majority of businesses rely on Google Analytics to track their site visitors, but why do some companies use Adobe's analytics tools, and how do they compare with Google's tools? So I think Melissa's smiling about that topic already. What do you find are the main reasons why people end up using Adobe's tools rather than Google's tools?
I think one of the predominant things you need to be aware of, if you're going to a paid solution, you need to be able to justify the resources you have at your hand to utilize the tool to the best of its ability. So in my opinion, I think that if you don't have at least one dedicated analyst who's in that tool every single day, looking at that data to the depth that it needs to be looked at, it doesn't make sense to pay for a tool. And Google Analytics, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, has really come into its own in terms of what its offerings are and the capabilities. Back in the day, you could only have, 4 goals set up, for example, 4 conversion goals, and now we're way above that. So the tools are definitely becoming more competitive with each other. But I still think the resource that you have on hand is probably the determining factor on which way you decide to go, whether it's the free version of Google Analytics or going with Adobe Analytics. Adobe is certainly more customizable if you have a very robust website or complicated things that you need to be tracking. That would be more the way to go.
So do you think that generally, if you have the budget and if you have the resources to manage these platforms, that the Adobe solution is probably still the better one for these larger type companies?
I think for enterprise companies, I still think that's the case. I haven't had any firsthand experience with Google Premium at this point, but there's a really hefty price tag on that, and I would have a hard time justifying moving from the free version of Google Analytics up to the premium version for not much more gain in terms of its capabilities up until the new 360 suite was just announced.
Yeah, that could be very interesting indeed. It's $150,000 a year, isn't it, for the premium level?
Rumor has it, yes. I've never seen official Google say that, but that's everything that I've seen and heard, yes.
Okay, we'll stick to rumors just now, yeah. So that's intriguing that obviously people are paying a significant chunk of money, perhaps something different. You could argue that, I guess, maybe they're even actually paying that money to have a bit more consultancy with Google as opposed to just using the platform. Do you know if that's the case, Melissa? Do you know if, like, say, Google will kind of give companies time of themselves rather than actually just the premium platform?
I'm not sure of that. I mean, I know from an Adobe standpoint, from an agency, I guess we're a little bit different than their typical business model. But from an agency standpoint, obviously it's nice to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody and actually have tech support. If you need more than that, obviously then they have consulting services that you could certainly pay for, and they're happy to take your money for that. I mean, I used to use Omniture a little bit in the past, but I haven't used Adobe Analytics products for a while. What is available from Adobe at the moment? Oh, they have really invested a lot since Adobe bought Omniture, they've really invested in the user interface, thank goodness, because it's heads and tails better than it used to be. You know, when we first signed up with them probably 7 or 8 years ago, the capabilities, just the user functionality are just heads and tails above, better than what they used to be. One of the things that I love in Adobe versus Google are the dashboarding functions, where you can have a very user-friendly dashboard where everything lines up nicely. You can print it. It doesn't go across page breaks. You can email it in a nice PDF format, again, that is very usable to the end user. But more important to me is the fact that you can have multiple report suites on one dashboard, and you could have multiple date ranges on the same dashboard, and Google does not really allow you to do that. So that's one of those functionalities. And then the other one that I feel like Google could probably do this anytime, maybe tomorrow, but Adobe allows you to stack segments on top of each other. So instead of, if you wanted a natural search segment and, people who entered on the home page, you don't have to create a new segment of people from natural search and entered on the home page. You just stack them on top of each other. And right now with Google, you still need to basically create all those individual segments. So those are my two big selling points from my own standpoint from Adobe.
Okay, so then would it be fair to say that Adobe is probably more straight out of the box, and an enterprise can use it straight away, as opposed to Google Analytics? That's probably going to be customized to your own needs a bit more.
Oh, that's a trick question. I feel like from an implementation standpoint, I feel like Google Analytics is a lot easier to implement out of the box. Okay. But in terms of usability, once it is implemented, then yeah, I would actually prefer Adobe out of the box. Okay.
Because, Google Analytics, I've used that quite a bit as well, obviously. And I did my Google Analytics IQ 2 or 3 years ago or so. But yeah. Even then, I found a lot of the videos weren't that completely up to date. And you really do have to work hard to actually keep yourself up to date with everything, because they add on so many improvements so often. It's almost a full-time job in itself just to keep up to date with everything. And is it feasible for a small company, for instance, to actually really understand and get everything possible they can out of something like Google Analytics? Or do you think generally they're better off using a consultancy to deliver and optimize things on their behalf?
I think it depends on how much time, again, a small company would have to dedicate to looking at that data. Google Analytics is very good at telling you the important things. So if you're just looking for a top line, hey, what's going on with my website? You can actually go into the real-time analysis and see exactly what's happening right now. And the basic information is really at your fingertips. They're very good about showing you, good graphs and very easily understood information. However, if you're looking to dig deeper, that's when I feel like they may be better off paying for a consultant to come in and really help them understand what's going on in the deeper levels of the data that's available to them through Google Analytics.
Okay, and actually, you've gone in a slightly different direction. You're using the tool Get Clicky, I believe.
Yeah.
So I assume you've got a bit of experience with Google Analytics as well.
Yes.
So how would you compare the pros and cons between Get Clicky and Google Analytics then?
So I basically used my Google Get Clicky to get an overall baseline view of the website and see what pages are getting more views, and not to do more in depth, but just stay on where am I getting clicks from, where which pages have more user attention and like more time is spent on that page, and just the overall view. So for that, I find Clicky works for me. If I do the same thing in Google Analytics, I have to go through so many skins of like so many screens to get to that point. And another problem I face with Google Analytics is it's all the information architecture is you have to go inside properties, and then you have to go inside another screen to kind of manage your account. And there are like every time I use it, I have to relearn it, yeah. So that's a bit of a kind of like a friction for me to understand the Google Analytics, basically. Yeah.
And this is from a guy that's quite technical, obviously. And if you have challenges with keeping up to speed with how Google Analytics works, then what hope do conventional small business owners have? Maybe that means that Get Clicky is better for smaller businesses to quickly understand their analytics and just see a few simple screens in terms of what's going on.
The layout is very well laid out. There is a bit of it's not as clean as Adobe UI, but you kind of see everything right away. Like all the screens are pretty much as soon as you get into your dashboard, you can scroll into all the sections of the analytics. Yeah.
So how does it work in terms of goals and measuring things that your users do on your website? Does it do that fairly satisfactorily?
Oh yeah. So they've got, you can do everything that Google Analytics does, and it's way more easier to set up on Clicky.
So how do goals work? Is it just URL based, or are there quite a few other options there as well?
You have URL based, you have clicking based, you have heat map tracking, and I don't use that. Like I don't use goals a lot because I'm still more focused into the overall look and overall performance of the website and the pages and stuff. So at least on my personal projects, that's the extent I go into analytics. Because I'm not working on with analytics, I'm not working on bigger projects. With UI design and UX design, I do go into a lot of depth. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. I remember years ago using a service called Stat Counter, and that was before Google Analytics even existed. So you remember that one there, but that was quite appealing because they gave the live data straight away, but it's limited to a certain amount of users. But they worked by having a pixel on your website, and the rumors were that that was one of the reasons why they became one of the first PR10 websites, because so many people obviously were kind of linking back to them inadvertently. But tracking has come quite some way since then. So that's Get Clicky. It'd be interesting to see if anyone watching is using any other service, what service they're using, and indeed what they think of the pros and cons of the service you're using. So if you're using a particular analytics tools that you think is a bit different, tell us in the chat, and we can maybe talk about the pros and cons of that as well. But with regards to the companies that actually use the Adobe tools, Melissa, do you find that it's, even though it's an enterprise, if they don't have a massive website with kind of loads of pages and different calls to action, is it really worthwhile paying for a big analytics tool?
To be honest, I don't see the value there compared to you. I mean, all the data exists in Google Analytics that exists in Adobe for the most part. I would be hard pressed to say you need to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars a month for a service where the data is available in another tool for free. You just need to go look for it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, take time to learn it and set it up, and it's worth it in the long term, even though it's a little bit painful in the short term.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to topic number 2, and that's Google have launched their Analytics 360 product, or 360 product, I guess how it's pronounced, over the past few days to a bit of a fanfare. It's aimed at doing a much better job of tracking the whole customer journey. But why are Google releasing this, and what kind of impact is it likely to have? A few chuckles there from Melissa. What are your thoughts behind why you think Google are wanting to do this?
I do think that they are in a constant battle to compete with the more enterprise solutions like Adobe. And Adobe does have the entire marketing cloud with all of these competitive products. So I think that has to be their angle, that they want the full customer picture. They are also Google, so we know that all the data is probably self-serving that they get to collect as well. I'm sure that they wouldn't come out and say that, but that would be part of my instinct there. I'm pretty excited to see what these products end up being. There's very little information that you can see right now to see really what these products are. But it's pretty exciting to see. I'm also unclear as to whether if you are a Google Premium client, do you just get these additional products, or are they one-off and you have to purchase them separately? I'm not sure about that.
Yes, it's certainly unclear regarding the pricing structure as well, and who would actually get access to them, and whether or not it might be viable for medium-sized businesses. Because certainly when you click on the link at the moment, it doesn't give you any information at all, hardly. Right. I read an article in VentureBeat earlier on today about it, and it was quite interesting. They were saying that one of the reasons they're doing this is because Facebook has got so much power now in terms of information and being able to provide more detail about customers or prospects to people who are wanting to advertise. And of course, Google Plus is a social network that's not really utilized that much compared with certainly Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, and you can list a few over Google Plus certainly at the moment. So is Google going to be able to compete with Facebook and these other networks in terms of in the delivery of full picture of what its customers do? Do you think? I mean, where's the data coming from? Is it coming from the fact that to use Google services like YouTube, you need to be signed in to your Google account rather than an individual service now? So obviously Google are passing information through its different platforms. Is that going to be enough to be able to compete with the Facebook Goliath? What are your thoughts on that, Melissa?
I think it's not just that. I think it's the fact that they've got now the ad platforms that also link in. So, AdWords will be linked to that. Their other display advertising networks will, which then opens up to all advertising. So I think that because it's all going to feed into that one central system, I think that it's going to give them a lot better, close to a 360 look at their consumer.
I guess it's
just going to follow you everywhere.
360 following you about, yeah. So maybe that's not the best way to look at it. I mean, it's certainly being sold as positive for advertisers, positive for consumers as well. But I think there are probably less positives for consumers than advertisers.
From my own personal experience, if somebody's going to advertise to me, I would much rather at least see a relevant ad than something completely irrelevant. So if my data is floating around out there and I've looked at shoes, for lack of a better something to search for right now, and I leave that website and now I'm on the weather.com website and there's an advertisement for those shoes that I just looked at, I would rather be served those shoes ad than something completely irrelevant, like golf clubs.
Well,
That's just my own experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess it's down to the quality of the advertising as well by whoever is doing the advertising, because if you do retargeting campaigns, some advertisers go overboard, and if you visit a web page once, they may follow you around the internet and try and advertise everywhere possible, and you have to be more subtle than that.
I would agree with that. It can get a little overbearing at times.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll allow a more scientific, a cleverer approach in terms of knowing what to say to people at the right time. If you start to know things like what they're doing on the device that they're on, then you can tailor the advertising experience towards what they're doing as opposed to who they are.
I agree. I'm curious to see how this is going to play with cross-device tracking. I still feel like this is a big gaping hole in analytics in general, but really understanding the full consumer path from start to finish, or if it's a cycle of repurchasing, what that full cycle looks like. If people start on a mobile device, you still have that problem unless you have a website that requires you to log in for some reason. It's very, very difficult to track cross-device. So I'm curious to see if Google is going to somehow use this 360 suite to gather this data across device and show that information in some way.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about cross-device tracking and also attribution for years, really, but it doesn't seem to have improved that much at all. I mean, did you favor any particular attribution model at all, or is that just an art rather than a science?
I feel like it's an art rather than a science, and I feel like from an agency standpoint, we talk about first click, last click. From a Google Analytics standpoint, actually, one of the Google Analytics selling points for me is that they do have the multi-channel attribution model that you can play around with and do a linear attribution and really see that very easily, where Adobe does not have something that simple available to you. But I do think it's a little bit by client and a little bit of art to it, for sure. Like where does PR play into that, where you never necessarily see, your press release went out, and where did that play into that customer journey?
So actually, don't worry, we're going to be talking about user experience in a little bit, so you'll be able to contribute more to that, obviously. But I mean, with regards to what Google are doing here, and also I guess on-site interaction of the user, do you deal much in personalized content based upon where the user is coming from at all? Is that something that you're thinking about in terms of UX?
That is something we're leaning towards. We haven't quite got there yet, though, but it's on our radar.
And does that, I mean, one of the challenges with that, of course, is SEO as well. And you've got to make sure that, that there's a primary piece of content that Google sees and ranks and sees, hopefully, social signals coming into as well. And if everyone experiences personalized content, then I guess that may be more challenging. Do you think there's a good solution to that?
That's a tricky question. SEO is not necessarily in my wheelhouse, but I agree that, I feel like regardless of where you're coming from an SEO perspective, whatever you searched for has got to be the primary piece of information on that landing page. It's got to serve you at that moment, at what, your part of this, whatever this purchase is or research that you're doing. It needs to provide that information to the consumer.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, coming up, we're going to be talking about conversion rate optimization, best practice in 2016, and asking the question, what analytics data should we use to drive UX design decisions? But first of all, thanks to a few people who have been sharing the show on Twitter with your own followers. So thanks to Dave from erockets.co.uk, Louise from cromark.com, that's Cromark with a K, and Casey from fueltravel.com. Do you know them at all, Melissa?
Well, I do know Cassie.
Cassie. So yeah, thanks for sharing the show on Twitter. Use the hashtag TWiO, and I'll try and keep an eye on the tweets that are coming in there and read out any comments, and keep the comments coming in on Blab. There's a bit of a lack of comments on Blab. We've got quite a few people watching here, but maybe just listening rather than interacting. So if you've got a strong opinion on what's being said, then add a comment or two, and we'll try and interact with that as well. But let's move on to the next topic, which is, what does conversion optimization best practice mean in 2016? Is it about split testing? And what should we be testing? And also, what's likely to have the biggest impact on the bottom line? So let's go to actually for kind of the first moment here. Now, in terms of producing a great user experience, we're wanting to make sure that the content is as effective and relevant as possible. Does that mean that split testing is one of the most important things to be doing?
It's definitely the easiest way to go about testing the performance of the page. And I think people are now turning to more simpler and concise content strategy, just not have a lot of content and just make it more streamlined. Just give them one simple button, but then it's you have to balance it with the complexity of the product, and keep in only the points that are directly valuable to the target audience. Like if your campaign is for let's say sales marketing for individuals, then you're streamline the content strategy just for individuals, not for agencies and not for large enterprises. That would work more than a better message. I think that's what people have been doing for a while, and they'll still continue doing that, I guess.
Okay, so does that mean that something like buyer personas are what companies are really focusing at the moment? What they're doing is they're trying to really be very closely identify who their target prospect is and write content around that. And do you think most companies are doing that successfully, or there's a lot of improvements that need to be made?
So right now, I have a meeting with one of my clients, and I will have to convince him to reduce the audience that he's targeting his campaign for, because again, I see that he wants to give out all the points about his product, but then the target, the 80-20%, the people who are going to be doing the buying the product are a small percentage of the whole message. So I mean, there still needs to be again and again you come back to the client to simple things down, and you just have to make the content way more simpler and more focused on just the audience that it's gonna who are going to make the purchase right away, or
Okay. So basically, a low percentage of whoever is browsing your site are likely to make an immediate transaction. So because that's the case, you need to be producing and publishing content that bubbles them on along the way, builds your brand reputation in their minds, and makes them more comfortable or more likely to make a purchase with you in the future.
It's hard for me to give an example without saying the names of the brands. So basically, it's just narrowing down your focus to the right audience that you're targeting your product for.
Okay. And what types of industries, say, have a very long purchase cycle and need to be more aware of publishing more content to build a relationship rather than actually be focused on just actually the end purchase?
That's a long question. Okay. Wait, it's a tough question to understand.
Maybe if we can simplify it down to B2B and B2C. Generally with B2C, you might be dealing with products that cost less and maybe more likely to actually result in some kind of instant decision in terms of purchase, but B2B is quite a long communication cycle before any kind of purchase is made. So if you're talking about a B2B business, would you encourage a business to actually structure their content on their website in order to actually build that relationship over time?
For that, I think analytics is the best tool to kind of judge what kind of pages are getting more views on, and then do a lot of user testing just to find out what the customers want and what they're looking for on the website. Even if you have a product, how they go about looking at your product. If let's say it's analytics, what part of analytics is more relevant to them? Do they want to set a lot of campaigns, or do they want easier reporting and sharing the? It's all about what kind of. Okay, let me think of some example.
I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is, have a look at the pages that people are interacting with, and make sure that your content and your split tests are probably focused on those kind of areas, on the most common landing pages that people interact with.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if you were to identify the top pages there, and you were to find, for instance, maybe an old blog post is ranking quite highly for a certain keyword phrase that happens to be bringing in traffic and a decent amount of organic visitors, is there anything that you would generally tend to recommend with that? I mean, would you want to add content to the top of an old blog post, or maybe actually add some kind of call to action in the sidebar?
You can always give on your own blog posts and stuff like more like an update or something at the bottom that adds to the like a content revision. And as for I mean, you can always try out like making more pages and getting a feedback from other people, how the pages do the pages actually give them information that they require, or like I need to think. I'm not prepared with examples in my mind right now.
That's okay.
Can I jump in with an example?
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, sure.
We actually just had this come up with the client this morning in a client meeting, where we have, again, we deal with mostly hotels are our clients. And we have one hotel client that their website ranks very well for a very, very specific room type, people looking for jacuzzis in their hotel room. And this one blog post ranks very well for that particular search term in Myrtle Beach. But when you look at the blog, there's no call to action on it. It links to, some internal pages where you can view these rooms, but to the average user, there is nothing jumping out at you that says, hey, click me, look at this room, let me book this room type with this jacuzzi. And at least in Myrtle Beach, that's a very, very qualified buyer at that point. They're looking for a very specific thing in their hotel room, and there aren't many to choose from in this area. So when we looked at the analytics, we saw that about 50% of those people were just leaving the site from that page instead of going on and pursuing those rooms further. So we've already made those recommendations to clean up the page a little bit, add some calls to action, and hopefully get people deeper into that conversion funnel.
So, Melissa, do you see a trend towards actually websites starting to optimize for very long tail niche keyword phrases, but obviously something which is hyper relevant to that individual?
Yes, exactly that. And I will say that these pages don't get tons and tons of traffic, but like I said, the traffic that they are getting is extremely qualified. So, if you can get those, 100 people a month at a 2 or 3% conversion rate versus losing them, that's a lot of money in our clients' pockets for very little, what would seem minute changes to the website.
Yeah. I mean, the quick wins are certainly the pages that you already are getting traffic from. I mean, it could be traffic from links from other websites. It could be
Right.
or organic ranking, certainly. But I think it's easy as a business to think, okay, we've done that in the past. What do we need to publish in the future? But taking advantage of the content that you've already got is probably the biggest quick win.
Right.
Actually, I see you nodding to that as well. Is that one of the initial things that you would talk to a business about in terms of maximizing their traffic and their ROI by focusing on their existing content rather than publishing new content?
Yeah, restructuring content is the easiest route to. You look at like the jacuzzi example. I think if you clean the page up, what I'm also thinking of trying out building landing pages with just at the home. I think a lot of people are already doing that. Is just have the logo to go back and remove the navigation. It won't work on blog pages because on blog pages you still need your the main navigation. But I think the special pages, I think Unbounce does that. Have a singular landing page which stands out outside the website, but has the logo and the branding. But it's more focused. There's only one call to action, and also remove the footer and make it just for the purpose of the whole goal. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's great. Because if you have too many calls to actions on the same page, obviously you're giving people too much choice and perhaps too much irrelevant choice. So if you can get inside the minds of the consumer in terms of what they're looking for, then that's the call to action that you need to offer on the page. And if you offer them too much additional choice, they're going to forget about what they were looking for to begin with.
And also experiment with so if a product can serve different audiences, like experiment with a few. Let's say if there is cloud servers, and you can make a page for cloud servers for podcasting, like storing your podcast and delivering it to iTunes, and make multiple pages. Just make one page for cloud server for podcasting. Try out see if it's getting more responses or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great idea. So you can expand your content based upon the activities that people would want to use your product or service for, and not just talk about your product or service.
Yeah.
So to put it in context and everyday life.
Cases,
different
use cases and stuff.
Now, you mentioned Unbounce as a tool there. Are there any other tools that spring to mind as being great tools to actually use for split testing for improving conversion rates? I've been trying Hotjar recently myself, and I found that really good. Is that something that you've tried?
I haven't tried that. The simplest way is to just draw it on a piece of paper, discuss it with the team. What do you think about structuring content like this? Do you think having the information about, let's say, if I take the same example, cloud servers for podcasts, if you want the server performance in the top, or do you want the storage and the file handling or something like that in the bottom? Just talk about it, and then the thing is whatever content that ends up on the page should be easier to convince on a piece of paper as well. Don't think of design right away. Just think of structuring on the page first, and if it works, if you can explain that or talk about it with somebody on a piece of paper, then it'll probably work on the web. Yeah. Okay,
so don't try and restrict yourself to existing themes or templates. Think out of the box. Just design what you think is right in physical copy, and then worry about code afterwards, basically.
Yeah. And I think if you can incorporate open cart testing, cart sorting, basically, just if you're familiar with this, it's just basically, let's say you have a bunch of cards and you write down features, you write down different keywords and see where your target audience places those cards together. Like if they place something that you thought of a service under features, then you can think of include that in that as on the page as a content strategy structure.
Okay.
That is making sense right now. Okay.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So, I mean, Melissa, have you got anything to add to that at all in terms of experiencing a website from a user experience perspective, improving a website from a user experience perspective? I mean, I was thinking personally of user testing. I've used the service usertesting.com, and obviously you shouldn't just rely on software to track what people do when they visit your website. So if you actually talk to people and get their feedback, then you might have a different perspective on things. Is that something that either of you have done and like?
We have used usertesting.com as well, and it's a very valuable service to hear that feedback. Like you said, not just watching what people are doing on the site, but actually getting to hear what they're thinking as they're completing a task that you're asking them to complete on the site. And we are constantly amazed at the hiccups that we just see are so blatantly obvious. Like why would you click on that thing instead of this thing that we think is so obvious that you should click on? But to actually hear people and their input on the process of, completing a task is very valuable. We also use Visual Website Optimizer is our A/B testing platform right now. And they have recently released a behavioral analysis service as part of that product, where it's basically competitive to ClickTail or Crazy Egg, where it's got the heat maps, and you can actually, it also does have the video of people's mouse movements through the site and whatnot. But what's been really valuable to me are the scroll maps that are available. So you can actually see what percentage of people are viewing, a portion of your page, and you can see as you scroll down that the visibility is smaller and smaller and smaller, and it really gives you some good ideas, at least to start testing, to start deriving hypotheses on where you need to start testing on a page. If there's a certain part of the page that is getting no visibility at all, and you feel like there's valuable content, or your call to action is down there, but only 10% of the people are seeing that part of the page, that gives you some ideas to start testing.
Great. Is VWO something that you've been using as well, actually?
I used it in the beginning. Actually, my friend built it. So, yeah.
Okay. You know people who did it. So,
yeah. So,
okay, that's great. Okay, you can.
But I really like the scroll testing thing that you just mentioned, because I've been working on longer pages, and I think that people might not be reading the pages, and then I think that scroll testing thing would give me a visibility and if it's actually working. And that's a really interesting part. Yeah. So.
And what about something like user testing? Have you used that? Have you talked to users directly? Have you maybe tried to focus?
I prefer like a less than around 10-15 people,
okay.
Like in-person testing, and. User test, I ran more of a surveys than user testing. I use SurveyMonkey for doing surveys, and that too to get a quantitative, like a general idea for something, and then go into bringing people into the office and doing direct interviews, and then running them through the prototypes, that sort of a deal, but not, I haven't used usertesting.com as of yet. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, certainly the principle of getting a group together is taking traditional marketing tactics and using that to improve your online experience, and that's wonderful that that people are starting to do that now, and not just viewing online as being completely separate to offline.
And I found, so let's say SurveyMonkey, it's good for an overall direction, but to kind of narrow it down, again, you need the right audience inside the office. And what else? There was one thing, one more thing. So the people who are using SurveyMonkeys, we when we had our questionnaires, we found out that their answers were I'm assuming that people who were working on SurveyMonkey surveys, they were using desktops. So our answers, so we also placed in one question, are you using a desktop, are you using a laptop, or your mobile phone? So all the answers were laptop or desktop. And that kind of influenced your like their opinions on, let's say if they want something on a accessible on mobile phone, or something they want something on a desktop. So that was another thing that we found. It's better if you do the in-person interviews with the right audience. Yeah.
It's a good point that the device that your users are using has got to reflect the devices that your target audience are likely to be using. And certain industries will be mobile-led, and other industries, I mean, like our own website, or one of our own websites, analyticsseo.com, looking at the stats through there, I can see that 90% of people viewing that website are viewing it on a desktop, because it's very much a B2B type service. But if you've got a retail service, or perhaps a restaurant or something like that, you're more likely to have people using mobile devices. So make sure that your user experience, your user testing reflects your users. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, that probably takes us nicely up to our last topic, which is web design has changed a lot over the last few years. Responsive designs produce sites that work well, whatever your screen size, and just-in-time loading has sped up user experience. But how do we know which elements of design impact great experience? So, I mean, actually, obviously with responsive design, that's let us experience websites nicely no matter what your screen size. How do you know, I mean, when designing a site, how to actually stage the responsive design? Is that something that you have much involvement at all with?
That also comes with the part when you're doing it on the like wireframing and structuring. If you think of those things first, it becomes easier to think of how the things will squeeze. And another thing that I noticed that people are missing out on responsive design is when they scale the design down, they don't care about the typeface size, the font sizes basically. And you would still see websites responsive, but on a mobile screen, you need a larger font size. Then I think even if you do 1.5 to 2 times the desktop size, it's still more readable than the default size of the website. But basically,
and would you say that most responsive websites are doing it fairly well, or there are very loads of bad examples out there at the moment?
I mean, as a structured websites are doing well, there are problems with the readability.
Okay.
And then
so
there are
you have to start pinching, then it's not a good experience.
Yeah, and then there are problems with ads. Sometimes these ads are slowing down the websites drastically on the older versions of iPhone and Android devices, basically. Yeah, older Android device. So yeah, again, you need more testing on all the different platforms. Yeah.
Okay. So make sure that you test your site on again every platform that your users are likely to use. Yeah. I remember designing websites 10 years ago, and it used to be so easy. You know, it was 800 pixels wide or 1024 pixels wide, and that was it. But, you know, you look at your analytics now, and there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different screen sizes that people are viewing your website on, and it's tough to make sure that your site looks good on all of them.
And then there's a bit of a problem when you if you share a link of a website through Facebook. Facebook automatically opens into their browser, and if it's got ads on it, it's in a crash. It might crash. It actually does crash a lot. Yeah.
And obviously do things like make sure you have a featured image if you're using WordPress, so that when people are sharing links to your site, then an image will come up with a social share as well.
Yeah.
And Melissa, with regards to responsive design, is there any way that you can see which version of your responsive design it converts best within your analytics at all?
I mean, we are definitely focused very much. We're trying to get our clients and our own internal processes to think mobile first, because for the majority of our clients, we are looking at about 40 to 50% of traffic now on a mobile device. Some sites are now over that 50% threshold. So mobile is critical to our industry right now. So we really do try and keep mobile first at the top of our minds. And from our perspective, again, we're talking about what should be a simple process of booking a hotel room. But you may not be ready to book a hotel room when you're looking on your mobile phone. You may just be looking for, this may be your first idea of, hey, I want to go on a vacation and I'm looking for some place to stay. I have no idea where I'm going yet. So that information needs to be displayed in a way that's easy to read, the site is easy to navigate, and the very pertinent information is up front and center. And hopefully, if you're on a mobile device and not ready to make that purchase today, you will remember us and go Google us and come back on your laptop tomorrow and then make that purchase. But we are seeing drastic increases in conversion rates on mobile phones compared to where we were at this time last year. Conversion rate is increasing faster than the traffic increases. So it shows us even at a greater increase that we really need to be focused on this, and responsive design is very important to us.
That's intriguing. And do you think that is because the quality of the devices are increasing, or because consumers are getting more comfortable with making purchases on a mobile phone because they trust sites more?
I think it's both. I think that, we're going from smaller mobile devices, and now we're getting bigger mobile devices. So I think that the increase in the screen size is certainly an advantage to us, but I also do think that the consumer is getting more comfortable making a purchase on their phone. A vacation is a little bit of a big ticket item, so the fact that they are willing to do that is a good sign for us.
And I guess it's also access to 4G, faster internet as well.
Sure.
And if they have that, then they're more likely to stay on right to the end and be happy experiencing a purchase path of a website and mobile device.
Yes.
Great. Well, I reckon that just about takes us towards the end of this week's show. So shall we just finish up with a single takeaway, maybe based on our discussion, what you think our audience should be going away and thinking about looking at within their websites or their businesses based upon the conversation that we've had so far today. So what would you leave our audience with, Melissa?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. I would say choose an analytics tool that fits your needs to the best of your ability. If you need help, there's people out there who can help. Let me tell you, Twitter is an amazing tool when you're looking for help when it comes to analytics. And keep mobile top of mind.
Keep mobile top of mind, absolutely. Keep an eye on what devices your audience are using, where they are when they're using it, and try and deliver an experience that is right for your audience at the right time.
Yes.
I tell you what, I love Google's, I think they call it micro moments content strategy. I don't always like everything that Google says, but this I do. And I think it's a wonderful way to look at how you're interacting with anyone that experiences your website. You'll think of what they're likely to be thinking themselves at a particular moment in time, and try and deliver what they're seeking, as opposed to just selling your stuff to them.
I agree with that.
And also with us today, Akshay. So Akshay, thanks for joining us. And what would be your one takeaway that you think, based from our conversation, that people should think about?
From a user experience design perspective, I would say user testing and wireframing. Like, do it on explain it to your client on a piece of paper. It depends on the stage you're on, the planning, and if it works out on a piece of paper, it might work as a real page. I mean, if the structure is as simple as a piece of paper, it will work. Yeah.
So paperless office hasn't arrived yet. Isn't going to arrive anytime soon if you've got anything to do with it. That's great. No, because again, people are stuck on their computer screens, and just to see things from a different perspective, could I guess let them come up with designs that are a little bit more novel and not just copies of everyone else out there.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So I mean, actually, so again, thanks for joining us. Can you remind our viewers where they can find out more about you?
You can go to my website. You can follow me on Twitter and at Akshay Spaceship. That's my Twitter handle, and that's it. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, and sorry, what's your website again?
akshaycharan.com. You can go through Akshay Spaceship on Twitter. You'll find the link to my website. Yeah, you can follow me through that. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I'll include links to that in the show notes as well. And Melissa, where can people get hold of you?
Easiest to find me on Twitter at @MAKavanaugh. You can also look at us at fueltravel.com if anybody is in the hotel industry space and looking for some help with their digital marketing. Wonderful.
And well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to have you both on.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Well, I'm David Bain, Head of Growth at Authoritas, actionable big data for enterprise content marketing. And you can sign up for a demo of our platform at authoritas.com. And you can also find me interviewing online marketing gurus over at digitalmarketingradio.com. Now, if you're watching this show as a recording, remember to watch the next show live. So head over to thisweekinorganic.com and be part of the live audience for the next show. But for those of you watching live, we also have an audio podcast of previous shows. So again, sign up to the email updates at thisweekinorganic.com and you'll receive the podcast links from there too. But until we see you again, have a fantabulous weekend, and thank you all for joining us. Adios. And thanks again, Melissa and Akshay.